And then Jesus tells Peter that on his confession, on his profession of who Jesus is, the church will be built. God's kingdom will be built on earth based on who Jesus is as the Messiah, the Son of the living God. But now today, pretty much in the same interaction that Peter and Jesus are having, just happening moments later, Jesus turns to Peter and his disciples and he says, guess what? I have to go to Jerusalem, where you know what? I'm going to suffer. I'm going to be arrested. I'm going to be beaten, be put on trial. I'm going to be crucified. And then I'm going to be raised. Peter now steps back, says, but wait, Lord, remember? You're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Tell me this isn't true. This can't happen to you. Not the Messiah, the Son of the living God. This can never happen to you. In one moment, Peter is blessed by Jesus. And in the next, he is rebuked. He's called the deceiver, the tempter, the Satan. Jesus says to Peter, get behind me, you tempter. Don't tempt me away from the course that is set before me. Don't distract me from what it is that I've come to do. Get behind me, for you have become a stumbling block. The Greek word here is a scandal. You have become a scandal to me, for you are not focused on the way of God. Instead, you're focused on your way, thinking that you know the way and how this is going to work, rather than trusting that the Father has a way. Peter thinks in his mind, but surely there has to be another way. Surely, Messiah, Son of the living God, there has to be another way. Jesus goes on to explain to Peter that this is the way of life for him and for all those who follow after Jesus, losing one's life in order to find it. That just doesn't make sense to Peter or his disciples or to us. What? I have to lose my life to find it? What does that mean? What does that mean? By tempting Jesus to an easier way of his journey, on his journey through suffering to resurrection, Peter personifies the temptation common to us all, that we can avoid losing ourselves in this life. We think we can avoid that it's just not going to happen in our lives, that we don't really have to do that. Jesus doesn't really mean that as the call to discipleship. Really? You don't really mean that, Jesus? Surely not I. Right? And so we're tempted, as Peter and the disciples, to hold on more tightly, afraid of what's going to happen if we lose our comfort, our success, our identity. And so these things become stumbling blocks to our own way of discipleship as we cling tightly to who we are in this world, to what we have in this world, to all the successes that have come our way. We hold on to these, afraid to let them go, thinking that if I just hold on to it more tightly, my life won't change. It'll all be okay. I'll get what I need, what I deserve. After all, it is about me. Right? Don't we all think that? Yes. It is about me. I deserve the parking spot that's closest to the door. I do, right? Surely I do. You know, I can even park in that highway because I deserve the parking spot closest to the door. I'll just be there a minute. Nobody else needs it. Look at it. There are 5 of them. They're just sitting there empty, right? So I'll just pull into that spot because I deserve it. I deserve that promotion, that raise that's coming. I want that seat at the table, so I'm going to push everybody else out of the way so I can get there first. I only have 11 items in my cart, even though the sign says 10 items or less, but I only have 11, and if you count these 2, you know, they're so small. It really won't matter, right? I deserve to go through the express lane, right? It is all about me after all. Yeah, that's what we tell ourselves. That's the tape that plays in our head over and over again, and it causes us to behave in ways that are not reflective of our life of following Jesus. We become territorial. We become possessive. We become angry. We think we know what is due to another person, and so we enact revenge on them in some way because we think we know all the answers. These stumbling blocks, my friends, stand in the way of the new life into which Jesus beckons us to follow him. Perhaps Peter's problem is that he sees only the suffering and the death. We see only what's in front of us in the moment. We can't see the rest of the story, the bigger picture. And for Peter, he's unable to grasp that new life, new hope, resurrection comes through suffering, through death, through our abilities to step aside and give way for another, so that another can come in the midst of community and in the midst of God's work among us. For you see, it's about God working in our midst, in the lives of the disciples and in our own lives, to bring life from death, hope from despair, resurrection in the midst of chaos. It is in times when we're tempted that we look for the easy way out. And yet this gospel reminds us that resurrection and life await us on the other side of suffering and death. This is the way of our God. It's the way God has been with God's people since the beginning of God's creation, working to bring life out of death, hope from despair, sadness, bringing joy into the sad places of our lives. Jesus calls us to this same way of life. You know, in a few minutes, little Lily is going to come and stand at this Irving carriage. She can't quite stand there yet, but she'll stand with Mom or Dad holding her. She's going to come to this font, and she's going to get her head wet with the water of life. And we believe that in the waters of baptism, she dies. She experiences the big death of our own lives, so that she raises out of that water a new creation, united with God. And then I'm going to mark her forehead, as all of your foreheads have been marked. And I'm going to say words that are to comfort, but also words that challenge. You have been marked with the cross of Christ forever. That's not just a symbol that I made with oil that feels good for a moment, but it's in this mark that never goes away from us, and it shapes how we live. At least we're called to let it shape how we live. And so Lily gets that mark today. That mark that when Jesus looks at Lily and remembers all the things in Lily's life, as God remembers all the things in our own lives where we have fallen short, then God sees that mark are mine. Be not afraid, for you are mine. And so we're called to live as God's people. Paul goes into our second reading. Take a look at that for a minute, because this list of exhortations can remind us of that. From the 12th chapter of Romans, just picking up a few verses here, Paul tells us, rejoice in hope, be patient in suffering, persevere in prayer, contribute to the needs of the saints, extend hospitality to strangers, live in harmony with one another, do not be haughty. Don't fight for that last parking spot, that place in the line, that table. But don't be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Don't claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay evil for evil. Live peaceably with all. This life of discipleship that Peter and the disciples fought against, that we too fight against, is a life of humility, of letting ourselves step back so that the other can be raised up, allowing the other to succeed so that they experience the joy of the kingdom, putting the other first in line, the other first in our lives for the sake of God's love for us and for all people. My sisters and brothers, may we hold tight to these words as we go forth into the world that needs our witness to what it is to be marked with the cross of Christ forever. May we hold fast to these words as we struggle day to day, knowing that from our struggles will come life, as Jesus